Hi, thank you for joining me once again. Some people are born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Hers was a golden one. Some people are born into families that are comfortable or well-to-do. She was born into a family that was rich, rich, rich in the Gilded Age of the late 19th century. Now, she was born into a devout Catholic family, but all that money could not keep her mother alive. Her mother died when she was young. Her father remarried. He married a very good woman who was very kind to her and her sister and taught them to care about others. At the age of 18, she was presented as a debutante to the high society of Philadelphia. It didn't seem to make much of an impression on her, at least not in her diary. Eventually, her father and her stepmother died, and she and her sisters were left. They were left with a great deal of money. By today's standard, she inherited about $400 million. What would you do with something like that? Well, she traveled to Europe. She had become concerned about the plight of Native Americans, and she was received in an audience by Pope Leo XIII, as was our own St. Therese, and she said, "Holy Father, there needs to be a community of religious sisters to care for Native Americans." And he said to her, "You should start that community." That was not the answer she was looking for. She returned home. She worked with the spiritual director and eventually decided that's what she was called to do. And she founded the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. And their charism, their gift to the church, was and is to serve Native Americans and African Americans, to serve those on the peripheries, as Pope Francis would call it. And so she devoted her fortune to that. She devoted her whole life to that. And when Xavier University was founded in New Orleans, she basically had endowed it. And people really didn't know that much about her role in it, but it was the first first Catholic university that was predominantly for African Americans. So she devoted her life to this generous service. Where did she find her inspiration for this? Well, it was in the Eucharist, the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. And at that time in the life of the church, even women religious didn't necessarily receive communion daily. It was written into the constitutions of her community that they would be able to receive communion daily. And so she and her sisters gave themselves in this loving service to Native Americans and to African Americans. Now, they didn't confront racism head on, as some other people are called to do, but through education, through their schools, through their work, through their service, through their faith, through their love, they helped to undermine racism. So they had a role to play in all of this as well. As she grew older, her health gave out, and she basically spent the last 20 years or so of her life as an invalid, offering her prayers and her suffering. She died in the mid-1950s. Her name was Katharine Drexel. Today she is known as Saint Katharine Drexel. She is an American saint, and she teaches us something. Yes, she had $400 million to give, but she didn't just give $400 million. She gave herself. And we all just have one self to give, but she gave herself. She didn't simply give what she had, she gave who she was. And she says, ours is the spirit of the Eucharist, the complete gift of self, the total gift of self. In the Eucharist, Jesus gives himself to us, and we seek to give ourselves to him, and to give ourselves to him in loving service to our neighbor as we go forth. I don't think any of us have $400 million to give, but we each have our own self, and each in our own way, according to our own vocation in life, our own calling, we seek to make that gift of self. We seek to give not just what we have, we seek to give who we are. The feast day of St. Catherine Drexel is March 3rd. As with all the saints, may she inspire us with her example, and may she assist us with her prayers. St. Catherine Drexel, pray for us.